joining us this afternoon. Welcome to DICM 2023 again. We have a wonderful panel discussion ready for you today on Beyond Borders, the challenges and opportunities in TV format and expansion. Please allow me to welcome our guest. The session will be moderated by Miss Nathalie Habib from Blink Studios. We also have Waly from S Productions. Anahita Kheder from Fremantle. Victor Ukmar from Red Arrow Studios International. And Sabine Sursock from Sugar Rush Productions. Please enjoy the session.
All right. Okay. First of all, thank you very much, DICM, and it's an absolute pleasure to have everyone here with us today. We're going to try and make this as interesting and as engaging as it should be, because TV formats does have a history in our part of the world. And today we can expect that with the new opportunities and the challenges that exist, there is a lot to be said on what's coming next for TV formats. Having said this, I have a disclaimer. I do not come from a TV format background, so I am going to be asking layman questions because honestly, I want to assume that everybody wants to hear what TV formats has in store for the region and beyond. So before I start with my Q&A, I would like to ask each of our esteemed panelists, who I had a fantastic conversation with, to introduce themselves, what they do, what their companies do, and what has been TV formats to them in the years that they have worked in that field. So Sabine, I'm going to start with you.
Yes, hello. My name is Sabine Sursock. I'm the co-founder of Sugar Rush Productions. We're a production house that's based in Beirut, but we are operating in the MENA region mainly. We specialize mainly in non-scripted content, and also we focus on original content as well as format. So this is a little bit our balance in the company and what we like to focus on.
Okay, can you just name some of the shows that you've worked on, even though it's not with Sugar Production, just because I think the audience were doing it, even if it's not Sugar Rush, but what you've personally worked on?
Personally, I've worked on the adaptation of shows such as Survivor, Arab's Got Talent, The X Factor, and within Sugar Rush I Got That a Lot. That's a CBS format. We've done a small format called Buried Life that people know more about, called as Leshla. And this show, very little people know that it is a format, so that would be interesting to discuss.
Okay, fantastic. Anahita?
I'm not sure if this is on. Okay, checking. My name is Anahita. I run the Fremantle offices in Dubai, where we cover the Middle East, parts of Europe, Africa, and Central Eastern Europe, CIS. Our business is, unlike Sabine and Saliee, a completely non-production business. We're a pure licensing office. The core of our business is to license our IP to producers or broadcasters. Our IP includes things like Idols, Got Talent, X Factor, but also game shows like Family Feud. And for us, the challenge is reflective of what the producers face as challenges and what the broadcasters face. So we don't directly feel impacted by budget cuts, but indirectly, when IP becomes unsustainable, we have to figure out solutions. So that's how my contribution is going to be, how to create creative solutions from the IP point of view so that producers and broadcasters can continue to do great business with us.
Saliee?
Hi. It's too loud. Okay. My name is Waly. I am the CEO and founder of S Productions. We are specialized, and our bread and butter is formats adaptation. We basically acquire the IP rights from the studios around the world, and we do the localization in Arabic for such formats. Our sample of formats are Jane the Virgin, Anissa Farah, The Affair, النزوة, Why Women Kill ستات بيت المعادي, and a lot of other formats.
Yeah, hello. Hi, I'm Victor, Senior Sales Manager at Red Arrow Studios International. We are based in Munich, and we are the distribution head of ProSieben Sat.1 in Germany, which is basically the largest private network. And I'm responsible for Eastern Europe, so CECAS. I do Middle East and Greece as a sales manager. And Red Arrow Studios has really been known for the biggest non-scripted format, Married at First Sight. So we're really focused on social experiments, dating shows. We launched Stranded on Honeymoon Island in Q1 this year. So that's pretty much on the non-scripted side, datings and social experiments, and on scripted sides, a lot of remakes from our network that we sold worldwide, including The Last Cop, which has been remade from the Czech Republic to Mexico. So all over the place.
Okay, great. So basically what we have here is a very interesting mix because we've got two people representing international setups, Fremantle and Red Arrow, who are actually selling their formats to the MENA region and to the Arab world. And then you've got two producers based out in the regions who have been adapting, localizing, and also aspiring to create their own formats, which is why this panel is going to get a little bit more interesting as we move on to my next question. So when we talk about formats, it's all about adaptation, right? And it's about trying to meet audience preferences, commercial viability, correct? And then the genre itself. Does it make sense? Should it be censored? Most of the things that Red Arrow does is in dating. Dating is a difficult format to sell to the region. So I'm going to start with Sabine and Saliee to give us a perspective of the shows that you have worked on in adapting to the MENA region. What has been some of the challenges that you've had in terms of conversations with companies like Fremantle and Red Arrow and with streaming channels about adapting authentically to the audience and what the audience needs?
Well, I think mainly the trick is really to adapt and not to copy. So the conversation with the format owners is really about the flexibility around the formats and the ideas, and then it comes with a creative team where you really work on looking at the specificity, the cultural specificities of your region and seeing where and how to include them in your format. So it shouldn't feel westernized at all. It should feel relatable to the person who's watching. It should feel relatable to the audience. And for doing that properly, I think it's also working with the proper experts, depending on the field. So it does feel relatable, but also it's cleaning up the format, if you want, in a way where all the formats have their own cultural imposition. So they have their own, if it's an American series, they will have American moments, I would call them. So it's taking the space of these moments to include ours instead, replace them rather than cancel them and take out the substance of the format.
Can you give an example, like a specific example that you had faced in the show?
A specific example, maybe I would talk about one of the first actually formats that we adapted in our company, the Leishla format, because it was a small format that was written by 3 guys in Canada. It was really their life stories as students that were roaming around the States with a bucket list. But we felt when we came for the format that we were at the beginning of the digital generation. And so we wanted representation of this generation because it felt that in the Gulf and in Saudi particularly, the youth had found a voice through YouTube and through those channels. So we made sure that these guys were represented. They were actually the guys that were in the show. They were the cast. So the cast was a big decision with the channel, of course. And after that, it was actually the authenticity, the the language that they were using was the first time we would use youthful language to that extent. They were really natural. We created with them bucket lists that were really adapted to their own culture. So we had bucket lists related to the Umrah, related to cooking kapsa with an Italian chef in Rome. So we really tried to make it feel home. And we make it much bigger than the original format. And this was because at the time there was really a feeling of freedom in the youth. You could feel that it was starting for them to open up, and there was this call for freedom, and this is what we really benchmarked in. We benchmarked on humor as well, because humor is different everywhere, and we gave them the space to have their own local humor. Sometimes when we were editing, we couldn't understand the joke, but I would call and say, what do you mean? Oh, okay, all right, it's funny, let's keep it in. So those details are what makes the difference, in my opinion.
Excellent. So basically, when it comes down to Sabine and what she's trying to do, she's adapting for the region, for the audience and their preferences. And what she's hoping she's going to get from the show is the right kind of reaction and the kind of traction that both her and the network or the streaming channel would receive from this adaptation of this format, correct?
Yes, definitely.
Based on reactions. So if I jump onto Saliee, Saliee is more focused on scripted content, right? So it's a different ballgame of adapting a format like Jane the Virgin. So what did you call it in Arabic?
الأنسة فرح.
The Anisa.
Yes.
There's an adaptation. Okay, go ahead. Just tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, adapting a format, it was never easy. It's a very long process that needs you to dig deep in the studio's catalog. And when it comes to adaptation, it's not only the content. Even the visuals needs to be adapted. Small details. For example, when we produced Why Women Kill, it was a periodic American drama. So in terms of visual, in terms of the details of the characters, everything around within the story needs to be fully adapted to be matching your culture, to be matching the region. And when you adapt a format, it shouldn't be only focusing on, for example, if it's Egyptian, it shouldn't be only focused on the Egyptian market. It's for Arab in general. So you need always to keep an eye on the guidelines, on the political side, religious side. So it's a very long process. For example, in Jane the Virgin, and usually in S Productions, we like daring content. We don't like to go to the safe one. We adapted The Affair. Even Jane the Virgin.
How much of The Affair was really adapted?
Like 90%.
Oh,
but the main no, like we try to be in the middle, keeping the theme and the vibes of the show. But of course, there are banned scenes that we will not be able to make it. But we translated more emotional, like we added more romance scenes. We added more eye context to deliver the same message of the scene at the end of the day.
Fantastic. So now I'm going to switch tables and I'm going to go to both Fremantle and Red Arrow to discuss what is your stance when it comes to actually trying to get formats to come into the regions. What are some of the challenges that you face and what do you hope you're going to be able to achieve? Obviously, you're in the licensing business, right? At the end of the day, it is all about commercialization. Right? So our panel is a mix of the commercial end and the creative and production end. So, Anahita, Fremantle, huge catalog, right? Big legacies, right?
Yeah.
Bigger titles,
Yeah.
okay? How do you maneuver? How do you decide? What are the corridor conversations that happen at Fremantle when it comes down to the MENA region, to the Arab audience, to what works and what will never be put in front on offer?
Okay. Wow, that's a loaded
It's an easy question.
Super easy. I'll keep it short. Obviously, we're blessed with a deep catalog, and we're blessed with strong IP. It opens doors. People want to have conversations. So I think the struggle is more about what happens when you sit at the table than getting to the table. So that's, you know, obviously works in our advantage. In MENA, the first thing is relevance and restrictions. So like you said, Victor, we have the #1 and #2 dating shows in the world, but it's not a conversation I can have. Although Take Me Out did air in Lebanon. Just that's a Pierre Daher is a very brave man. So a lot of the trends that we see globally, if you see where I'm sitting, I sit in a distribution office in Dubai. We have a global pipeline. We are given a lot of global intelligence. And sometimes the global intelligence is bikini reality, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I would say the first step is choose the genre that feels suitable. And the second thing is, even though we're the go-to place for these big shiny floor shows, focus on other slots. That's something else that we've tried to do, is push the game show agenda. It doesn't always have to be expensive primetime shows. It can be smaller, equally commercially viable, what I call sort of slot builders. So putting in a mix of shows that are considered primetime tentpole and smaller shows that are easier lifting. That's kind of my job, to make sure that both of those things are going in to either producers or broadcasters. And then being realistic about what the current climate is. So budgets aren't what they used to be in 2014. And making sure that, to what you were saying, is that when we actually have a show that a format that a client's interested in, that our consultancy, our flying producer, anyone that wants to come into the region and assist, is very acutely aware of what the challenges are, not just culturally, but also financially, and being as flexible as possible. I mean, I'll give you a current example. The X Factor's on air. It's traditionally a 26-episode show. We've recreated an 11-episode show just because it can still work, as long as the DNA is intact. And doing less of the we know better into a market. A lot of international distributors have been accused of that. We know who the better host is. This is just being a little less rigid, and a little bit more, having a little bit more empathy towards what's going on. Because from where I sit, the heavy lifting is done by them, right? So for us to go in as gatekeepers because we consider ourselves superior as IP owners has never worked in our interest.
Okay, great. So there is more flexibility in approaching the formats that would resonate with an audience, and the conversation with producers about, or let's just say listening to producers and understanding what it is that would really make sense to the audience here in the Arab world. So giving every show its signature so that it feels relevant.
And knowing, I think, really truly understanding your place. We bring significant value to the table, but we are one part of a very long value chain. And understanding that our business model has to make sense all the way through. And that goes all the way through to monetization of a show. So once a show is sold, it's not like, great, I'll come back in 18 months when you have to renew. It's more about, how can I hold your hand through the commercialization part? What do you need to do to make this successful? What is successful? Like, whether it's a producer, so if Sabine takes a risk on my show, which producers do now more often than before, how can I help her? And I know this sounds really idealistic, but genuinely we do this. I'm not looking for a medal here, but this is the way business needs to get done these days. What can I do to help you increase your chance of getting commissioned? How can I help you wipe off 3 episodes because they're not adaptable? And then how can I help whoever's monetizing it? So how can we help the broadcaster in that ROI process? A word we all hate. We wish it would just go away, but it's not. What does ROI look like? What are the problems? Can we sit at the table with brands? Can we help you pitch this?
Yeah. I think ROI should become the forefront of every conversation when it comes to content today. And but then that's going to be following up on the next question. I want, Victor, your opinion on you sitting at the table, licensing out to the region. How has that been for you? What are the things that you see could happen better, or have happened, but you weren't actually very satisfied with how they were adapted or anything of the sort?
Right. So for us, really, the focus and an important keyword is flexibility. when we approach our clients worldwide, we never go to them and say, okay, this is the format and this is how you have to do it. You know, we tell them, this is how we have done it. This is how it has worked in many, many territories. How can we help you to make it work for your audiences? What elements do we need to change? For example, I'll never forget this one. For Married at First Sight, which is the, the dating show where couples get married right away, we had one client that said, well, we want to include astrology in the format. And we were like, why? And it's not part of a show, it's not part of the original concept. And they were like, yeah, well, our audiences wants to see that. So we are blessed with very talented producers. We have Snowman, the creator of a format. And we talked this over, how we could incorporate astrology into the format, and it turned out really well. As long as it's not a decisive factor, as long as it doesn't deviate from the core of a format, we're very flexible to work in any region, really, with the laws, the customs, to make it work for their audiences. And obviously, a challenge for us in the MENA region has been dating, because it is something that generally is considered to be more private than in other territories that you usually sell to. But, we're always flexible. So if there is something where you say, okay, well, legally you can't do this here. You can't have a legal marriage on television. Or you say there are, things that are not acceptable for the audiences. We can change and work together. And it's usually a conversation between distributor, production company, and client and broadcaster. And we try to make it work. And that, has been very good for us. Just to mention one more example, for My Man Can has been a very, very, old format that we sold very, very much all over the world. And here you have an element of gambling, right? So if you would sell it here and a broadcaster would say, I don't know, in Saudi Arabia, for example, well, we can't have a gambling element. We would say, well, let's, take this out and say betting without any money, without any poker table. We get this out and we have a producer come in making suggestions how we can make it work. So yeah, that's our approach, and we hope that this will also kickstart formats in the region in the future to be very flexible.
Yeah, I hear you. Obviously, dating is a big, it's a big success story for a lot of markets, but it is a hard one to sell for this part of the world because of the value system, because how things are made and done here, which is why what I was thinking right now while you were saying is that rather than always importing formats, what are the chances of creating our own formats that we could potentially export beyond our borders and try to get people to engage with? So I'm gonna take that to Sabine first and see what your thoughts are on creating a space that allows for creative, original development of formats that could travel.
Definitely that's the aim. With time, that's the aim. I don't know that it happened yet. But things are changing pretty fast. I mean, these past few years have been very exciting in terms of how the market has opened, the trainings that has been happening, the workshops. There's a lot of effort into training, and our biggest problem for the longest time has been the writing. It still is, but we're working on it. But going back to our original formats, because they start of being original idea before turning into a format. So our discussions with the broadcasters is often to keep space also for original content, because formats are safe, formats are controllable. For the broadcasters, they see exactly where they are going. But having only formats is taking away from the space of the original. So it is a conversation with the broadcasters. And then turning it into formats is really writing a format that at its core, you're going to keep global values. You're going to keep global topics, friendships, love, any type of global subjects will work, but then you have to wrap it up with your cultural relevancy so that it could be relevant for your market. and then you can keep the same flexibility when another market is going to adapt. But unfortunately, it's an effort on which we're all working, but we're not there yet.
Fair enough. Okay, so basically trying to tap into themes that are relevant to the region where broadcasters would actually take the risk and support to help create formats that can work for the region and potentially sell beyond it. Fantastic, but that's for unscripted. For scripted, is there any room for original?
Yes, of course we do originals, but I'm against the school of when you start writing a content that your aim is to go abroad. For example, when you sit with Netflix team, who the team who were working on Money Heist, they were never had anything in mind that it will travel abroad. So good content is a good content, either with the support of the broadcaster or without. It's all about a good content and international mindset and connections. That's it.
Okay, great. So now I'm going to get down to the real deal, because that's what makes the world goes round, which is basically commercialization, ROIs. Okay, and I'm going to start with Anahita, you said something which is very interesting, that beyond selling the actual format to the companies, the production houses, and getting the streamers or the broadcasters on board, it is how you monetize it beyond, so that it lives beyond that 20, 30 minutes where I'm sitting and I'm watching, but I'm actually living out the IP beyond that. What has been your experience? Is there space for real monetization of IPs? I mean, Fremantle is obviously a much more solid example of IPs than anyone I can think of that is being sold here in the region. Have you been able to monetize any of these IPs beyond just sell it?
Yeah. Look, at the most basic level, 12 years ago, when I think it was the first season of Arab Idol, we made this rudimentary diagram, which was a little circle in the middle with the Idols franchise and then the multiple touch points. I mean, Ihab's shaking his head. He remembers it, right? And it was a really simplistic mind map of what IP as strong as Idols could look like. And what you're actually doing is you have that commercial slot in television, you have your 45 minutes, but you're creating a community with a vested interest in this franchise, and how can you capture that fan base? And this is this is way before digital became a big thing and social media was a big thing. But we had these little, I still have it actually in my office, and it was taking a very, and I hate the word holistic, but I'm going to throw it in there. We called it the 360 model, very fancy. It was really looking at, if you succeed with this television show, if you really genuinely create a fan base, if all the girls out there who love Mohammed Asaf, right, are there, what else can you offer them outside of this, of what's on your grid? And that was a very straightforward way of approaching it. Now, when we translated this to what it looked like commercially, when we approached brands in the market, our approach to brands wasn't, hey, do you want to buy this 30-second slots? Do you want bumpers in and out? It was, and then, I'm going to say things that are outdated, integration, product placement, yay, fancy, we'll put your logo on the Facebook page. But really, it went beyond that. When we knew that we'd succeeded when we had KFC tray liners with the Arabs Got Talent logo, and KFC was rolling this show out. They had buckets, and it's shameless. I mean, you had to sell your soul a little bit. But the one thing they didn't let us do was the indulgence shot. They wanted people eating chicken on TV. We didn't go there. But really, I think the psychology of it is the people who are investing in this show, not even directly with me, right? So I'm way removed. I'm like 4 degrees removed. The person who's putting money into this media plan wants to sell more cans of Pepsi. Like, if you think of it that way. So that is how we now look at it. We look at bringing brands on board and what they want to achieve, and then we sit with the stakeholders at the table and go, how can we give this to them without compromising the integrity? We don't want our big brands to look like supermarkets, and it sounds like planetary alignment, but it has happened. Outside of the Middle East, we actually go a step further. We bring the brand first. So we bring a telco, for example. I love telcos. They're my favorite. You bring a telecommunications company in South Africa, and you say to them, I know this is what you need. I know you need to sell more data. I know you actually have a content platform. How about we do The Masked Singer, and we'll give you X, Y, Z. And once we get a bit of a nod, then we walk them into a broadcaster or into a producer. And unless you think of that, you're never going to get your season 2s and 3s and 5s. You know, Sabine and I were just talking. She's like, you know, are you happy with this show? And I was like, I'll be happy when we have a 3rd season. Not because I want to do the 3rd deal, but because it means something works. And sustaining these franchises long term. You know, in South Africa, we've had Idols on air for 19 years. So it's doable, but you've got to put skin in the game.
So why do you think Idols has disappeared off the screens?
When you can answer that, will you call me? No, look, no, it hasn't disappeared. Look, what happened with Idols is, this is the other thing that maybe is, I don't know what you guys think, but I'm very curious. In this region, we've always been pan-Arab, right? Because a single market just couldn't sustain. So we're doing pan-Arab, and it sounded great. You know, back then, I used to tell my bosses, oh, this is really sexy. We cast in 22 countries. It's fantastic. And then that started to wane a bit, because really the money was only going to 1 or 2 markets, and everything else was considered a bit of, like, waste,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. And I think what an interesting step, and I don't know if this is the future, but I'm keen to get opinions on this, is that we went from Pan-Arab Idol to Saudi Idol. Not my genius idea, I had nothing to do with it, but it was something that we were testing. And Saudi Idol really resonated. I mean, when I say resonate, I mean, for the first time ever, I heard about ratings and how it rated, and it was a celebrated show. You can argue it was celebrated because we're on a wave where all successes in Saudi are celebrated, right? I know that. But I don't think it was a bad move. And then we're doing Iraq Idol. Suddenly, we're doing Idol, hyper-local versions of Idol. And I think that's what happened with Idol. The question now is Pan-Arab better? Is hyper-local better? I don't know the answer, but.
So I think we've all tried and tested this on so many fronts, but yeah, the question is it truly pan-Arab when we come to creating content? Or are we actually calling it pan-Arab and we are catering to specific audiences in specific countries where we can gain the most traction? Or should we call it, like you said, just local hyper type, focus on what works for them and give it to them? And that's a very big question. So when we think about that, and at this stage I wanted to, Victor actually, I want to talk to you about, you've been exploring this market and you've had your opportunities with it. What has been a failure, in your opinion?
A what?
A failure that you've experienced with this market?
In this market?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say a failure, because there's always an opportunity when you find an obstacle to overcome. I mean, in this case, obviously for us, the focus has been a lot on social experiments and dating for all our non-scripted formats. And we struggled to kickstart them in the region because of set reasons, culturally mainly. So it rather is like probably something that we should do as a homework, to think about ways to, because we're very close with Snowman, the creators of the shows, to bring to the region something similar, maybe not dating related, but with the same entertainment value that works with a specific region. And then you have a beauty that if it works here, you can sell it everywhere, because there won't be any other problems in other territories. But I think what it comes down to really is to take a look at the market, to see what works, and then to have that conversation with your producers, and in the brainstorming of when we have those sessions, to really specifically address certain regions. I think that's key.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Epic failure. Speaking about cultural relevance, The Masked Singer is a show we really fought to pick up on, because it was one of, everyone's waiting for the next big one, and this was definitely the next big one. So after a lot of scrambling with the Korean format holder, we got the rights. And then it was my job to roll it out. So of course, sell. And I convinced a producer in Turkey to pick it up, and he was quite keen. And he was going to produce it for Fox, and that makes a lot of sense, because in the US it was on Fox. And he's a fantastic producer. The guy knows his stuff. This is not some newbie. And so he produced The Masked Singer, according to the Bible. We consulted. He knew the local do's and don'ts. And we got taken off air in the middle of this massive scandal because the show was accused of promoting satanic practices.
Okay.
So that's not coming back. Just
Yeah, because obviously, because it's all about interpretation as well, right? So it's how it's interpreted, and it's about a specific climate moment that we're living in, and then how that impacts on budgets and production. Okay, so I know that one of the things that producers keep talking about here is we never get enough budgets to do what we want to do, so we have to do what we can with what is given to us. This is the going story. I'm a producer, I say it all the time. We squeeze the dime because, you know, we don't want to compromise on our aspirations as producers to actually deliver something that people would watch. But of course, in an ideal world, we should be getting better budgets because that would allow us more space to produce better and to do better. Has formats experienced better budgets than other genres that are being supported? Are they? Are they getting better budgets in comparison?
Yes, I think they are, because the only reason, first and foremost, is because it's a proven content, so they know where they're going and they know what's the aim. Also, we have to keep in mind, at the end of the day, original content, it is in competition with global content. Today, when you're on Netflix or when you're on Shahid, you have access to all this content, right? So you are in competition with this content, but you don't have the same budget, you don't have the same production value, etc., etc. What format has brought actually to the region, and it started with the non-scripted, and now it's the case with the scripted, is the know-how as well. It's because when you get the rights to a format, most of the time you have the know-how and a workflow and a structure that comes with it. And we benefited from this for a long time because now we're applying it, but without the support of the format. So we should be able to compete, but then again, when you come to budgets, it's absolutely not the same approach. When the same show has, let's say, $1 million per episode budget abroad, and we have 200,000 or 300,000, even if the production costs are not the same in the two territories, ultimately there is a difference in the outcome. So there are good sides to formats, definitely, and benefits, but there are also challenges.
Now, with unscripted, I feel the challenge is less intense than with scripted. I feel scripted gets the... because it's scripted, you don't need to pay the actors a lot. You can manage the set design in a way that, right?
Yeah, but in scripted, you have to pay a lot of money because everything is in front of you and in front of the broadcaster and in front of the actors. So,
there is comparison.
So you need to be up to the game while spending on production. You cannot remove, for example, a massive explosion that will affect the drama line because you don't have a budget. Then don't acquire the formats. That's why we always do an exercise before we select the format. Is it adaptable? How much, what's the average of the cost per episode? Is it matching the market rates or not? Because there is a ceiling, the broadcasters, that they will never go up above it. So it's better to do your homework before you acquire the format and then realize that it needs a lot of money.
Okay. So I just also wanted to open it up to the audience. If anyone has any questions regarding formats and TV formats in the region, and you're curious to understand what works, what doesn't work, what it is that you're hoping to achieve, because to be honest, I personally see a lot of people shopping around for formats when I go to the international markets. I see that. I ask them, why are you here? Because I usually, as an independent studio, I'm there to pitch. I'm there to pitch original. I'm there to convince the global market that my original IP deserves their pre-sales or deserves their network distribution. How successful we get is a different story, but trying is the point. However, I do meet a lot of people that go to the international markets because they're buying formats. So here's, for you as an audience, how do you feel, or do you have a question about formats, and do you think that that would be in any ways viable to your business? Is there any itching question coming from the audience? How many of the audience here are producers? Do we have producers in the room? Okay, we have producers in the room. Okay, do we have in any ways people who are working in licensing or in the kind of establishments where they're trying to sell their formats to the region? Okay. All right. Yeah, I believe that. There's a lot of people from Asia that are coming to the MENA region trying to sell their formats. Anybody else here who is in any ways related to formats, like dubbing studios? Yeah? Yeah, what is it that you do? Because I'm curious to see why you're sitting in this panel and why are you watching?
Hello, I'm buying formats. I'm researching formats and buying formats. That's my job.
You're buying formats.
Yes.
For which region?
For Russia.
For Russia?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So does Russia have a different landscape when it comes to actual formats exporting from Russia to the rest of the world?
Well, it's difficult talking about Russia exporting formats these days for certain reasons. But I think it's every country is individual in what kind of formats it presents. There have been no Russia case of blooming like Korea or Israel or any other country in the world. So no, there is nothing that I can speak of that would be very specific.
So interesting. So obviously, because we always consider ourselves in the Arab world that we have the lesser chances, but actually selling formats internationally is not something that a lot of markets actually do enjoy. And that's a reality that we need to accept, and maybe what should be focused on is trying to localize and adapt in such a way that it is authentic to our audience. Does anyone have any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
So the trend that I see right now, a lot of people are trying to integrate artificial intelligence into the formats. Some people are trying to integrate deepfakes. It's interesting if you look at the history of new technologies, like you look at the alter ego or avatars by Telpa, you see that there hasn't been a lot of success with those. And I see a lot of formats being pitched with a lot of AI ideas. So what's your take? How does it work? I mean, does technology have a chance of being the next big thing using AI, deepfakes, or any other kind of other gimmicks that can create a new great format? Thank you.
I can jump in if you like.
Yeah, and then I'll give it to Victor because I know he had a point on tech. Go ahead, Anahita.
Look, for me, at the moment, technology sits in the space of aiding in production. I don't think it should be the theme of the content. Obviously, we've all heard about the two that you mentioned, but there are two very disturbing deepfake relationship shows that are also coming out. I don't recommend you watch the promos. But for us, our focus as Fremantle has been how do we use mainly AI to try and reduce the cost of production where possible, and how do we integrate technology in a way that's also, because when you talk about rolling out formats, it has to be something that everyone can do, or a lot of people can do, most people can do, and at the moment it's a little threatening. So until there's enough proof of concept and a little bit more knowledge, it's not something that we would integrate into our big shows. Let's put it that way.
Victor?
Yeah, well, what it comes down to is good storytelling. Everything else is just an addition. So what happens when there is new technology on the market, people tend to abuse it. I mean, you could see that a bit with the cinema industry in CGI in the 90s and 2000s, where, you know, in the beginning it is adapted, and then at some point everybody's doing it and everybody's overdoing it, and then it's distracting from what you're actually trying to tell, which is a good story. So I think the thing here, the balance is to use those as tools, augmented reality, virtual reality, to enhance what a good story is, but not make that the focus of the format or of what you're trying to tell. That shouldn't distract, it should just complement and be an addition to a great story.
Excellent. Okay. Do I have any other questions in the audience? Anybody itching to ask anything? All right. So here as a final question to sorry. Oh, again.
I apologize for monopolizing your attention. If that's okay, can I ask another question? I recently read an article which claimed that basically the family viewing is over because you have VOD platforms. People don't watch VOD platforms together. They have individual times where they get together with their own device and watch their own television. So do you think this is true for formats? Are formats a family-based affair anymore?
If I may, I think the communal experience of sitting together in the living room, that still exists. It's just that now you have a second screen and the third screen, and the daughter is on her cell phone, and the father might be on the iPad, and just the mother might watch the format, right? So I think it's more like the attention is going into different directions at the same time, but I still feel like a good story, a good show can still bring people together on a Friday evening. You know, if it's, you know, cream rises to the top. So in the end, I still believe that this is not completely lost, but it certainly has changed with all the additional distractions that you have nowadays.
Yeah, and I would like to add a point on this. So there is family type content, and there is family sitting together and watching content. In my opinion, family type content is a very viable type of content, right? Because it appeals to the young and the old. Whether they're sitting together and watching it together, that I think is a preference within every household. But it doesn't discard the importance that there is a lot of type of storytelling that touches the spectrum of a family setup. And I think that if we decide that that genre or that type of production is irrelevant, I think it's going to be painful to see it disappear, right? So I believe family content type is a very essential part of entertainment that should remain in all its types, so that it actually has a place. And to be quite honest, if you read other articles, ROIs on family entertainment still fares best in terms of the return on investment. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's what I've been reading.
I think a good case study would be in Italy, where Got Talent has actually moved to Disney+. So Got Talent's a typical example of a broad spectrum, you know, broad audience show, and Disney+ is the commissioner.
All right, so any other questions in the audience? All right, so I'm going to give it to a final note for each of our panelists. I think what would be, in one word, okay, what would be the opportunity that you think should be part of formats for the MENA region? In one sentence. Yalla, brain scratch. What would be what is the missed opportunity in the region for TV formats? Better budgets. For example, here, easy. I gave you the best one.
I have two, maybe. Yeah. I don't know if either of them are any good. But it's something that I'm seeing in other markets where drama is becoming very cost intensive. So a lot of the slots that are being taken up by this drama frenzy, I love your work, so don't ever stop doing what you're doing. But that massive rush towards scripted in the linear space is proving to be too expensive to sustain. And yet the shiny floor shows are not packing the punch they used to. So everyone's thinking, well, what's the middle ground? And in Greece, what they've created is, I just gave it a name, the Greeks said it stuck, basically non-scripted drama, which is where you take a show and you give it that telenovela feel, and you drag it out almost as a daily with a massive story arc. And of course that works mainly in that relationship space. Not shows like The Bachelor, more shows like From a Once a Wife, where you can see people fall in love and out of love, and over the course of 3 months, they create very cost-effective, non-scripted drama, and it really delivers. It delivers in the sense that it gets the same drama audience, but at a fraction of the price.
Interesting. Okay. Sabine, anything comes to mind about a missed opportunity?
I think the missed opportunity that we are feeling is going straight to formats, because we're talking a lot now about dating shows and love and relationships, and this is a real interest for it. And for instance, we produced a series about love and relationship with Yusra for NBC and Shahid, and actually it kind of brought us to a place where we realized that we can talk about those subjects, even in Saudi Arabia. We have a space to talk about subjects that we feel might be taboo-ish or hard to approach, but we have to do it our way. So when picking a format is really picking the right format that works for us and not going automatically to a format. Some things can be dealt locally and we can tell those stories better, and some formats are really there to enhance our storytelling in a more global way. So it's really a balance between the both, I think, and that's the opportunity that we should grab and not miss.
Excellent. Saliee, anything? You don't have anything? Victor.
Yeah, I just think a missed opportunity is if you dismiss a good format too quickly because of certain concerns you have with a culture. I think you just have to, you know, certainly some formats don't work in certain territories. It's just a fact for various reasons. But many cases, producers or broadcasters dismiss good stories just too quickly, where with a little tweak here and there, if you remove one element, if you add another one, it would totally work with the audience. So that's something I think to consider for the future.
Great.
I think studios should be more flexible with the license period. 49 years. Yeah, that's the problem, because when the producer or the broadcaster decide or compare original story versus the IP, the acquired IP, it's mainly the license period. Okay. So it's when we acquired the first format, like 7 years ago, we had a hard time with the studios. Like, we needed, for example, 15 years. They were like, no, 3 years. No. And then by time they understand the market more, they became more flexible. But the main issue with the format is the license period of the IP. The longer it is, the better, and it will encourage people more to acquire more formats.
Excellent. Okay. Well, with that, we come to a close of our panel, and I want to thank our panelists for being part of this conversation.
Thank you.
I personally think you're all very dynamic in what it is that you're doing, and hopefully we'll be seeing more of TV formats here in the region. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So much.